more than a decade, Saturdays and Illegal Curve have been synonymous with one another. With insight, analysis, and interviews regarding the Winnipeg Jets, the Manitoba Moose, and all around the NHL, here are Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg, and your host, Drew Mindell. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show starts now.
Good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. And for all of those joining us live, wherever you are on the interweb, good morning to you and welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. I was half expecting Drew Mindell to be alongside Ezra Ginsburg and I, because his flight got pushed back a couple of hours. So I told Drew there's really no excuse for him not to be here because his flight is until 11:30 this morning. But for whatever reason, I guess he decided that making his flight on time, his delayed flight, was more important than being on the show. But ultimately, that's fine. That gives us more mic time, that gives us more time to talk about the Winnipeg Jets, the Manitoba Moose, and our good friend Emma Stone, or Emma Kidney Stone in your case. So we'll talk about that a little bit, of course, as most folks know, because Ezzy's an open book with his life. So he puts his life out there for the people, sometimes for their amusement, sometimes for their information.
Well, I think, Dave, in this case, I put it out there because anytime someone tells you that kidney stones are painful is not joking. I meant it, right? And yeah. I was kind of telling you, I was texting you and Drew the whole time. And obviously we won't spend too much time on it because we have a big Jets Islanders game to talk about here, which starts in somehow less than 3 hours, Dave. It's going to be a quick turnaround for us today on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, but we love it. It's an icy Saturday. We got the Saturday morning show as always, and then we got the big Jets Islanders game coming up at noon Central, right? But just a crazy amount of pain, and I appreciate everybody on Twitter /X and on social media with the well wishes. Spency, I appreciate it. It really is. I'm not sure if Spency had kidney stones, but long story short, I mean, I was in the hospital for 11 hours, and this is the thing, Dave. There's people in the hospital that have it a lot worse than I do. I got to say that, right? So I'm no different than anybody else. Even though I think I'm, the second best member of Illegal Curve, I'm just a regular person. But yeah, it's extremely painful, unlike any pain I've ever had. But thankfully, I took some painkillers and got out of there. And now I just have to pass it, right? So it's going to happen, any day now. But yeah, St. Boniface, just thanks to all the doctors and the nursing staff and support staff, because I mean they are the real heroes. Even though, Dave, I'd like to say we are the real heroes here on Illegal Curve. It's really healthcare professionals, first responders, stuff like that. Because let me tell you, after I puked outside of the emergency room, I puked like 5 or 6 times. It was really weird. It's like this new type of puking that I've been told about called pain puking, but I'm not going to get any more graphic than that. But yeah, it was just excruciating. But it's over until I pass it. So I'll have the strainer next to me so I can mine my little kidney stones, and then back to normal. So appreciate that, Dave. And as I said, let's get talking about the Jets here.
Okay, but I guess what I'm saying is this is a disclaimer. Don't be surprised next week in the chat in the show when Ezzy's wearing like a necklace and it's got like a little kidney stone on in the necklace, as he'll be wearing it as a prize for his surviving that. So we're glad that Ez is on the mend. We're happy to have Ezzy as part of our Saturday fiesta of hockey broadcast. It's not Puke Lunch, Spency. It is the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, followed by the Illegal Curve post-game show. We expect that around 2:40 p.m., barring overtime or something. So after the
Corey, my stones aren't on eBay yet. I haven't passed the stones yet, but I'm, like Dave said, maybe I'll make a necklace out of it or something, and I'll wear it. Maybe that'll be the good luck charm that the Jets need on their way to the Stanley Cup, Dave.
Perhaps probably not. But I suspect they'll ask you to leave the building if you've tried to bring that in. But ultimately, again, this is a busy day. We've got the Jets and Islanders playing at noon, as you said, Ezzy, in NYC. Not NYC, but NY State. And then, of course, the Moose take on the Canucks for the first time this season. So the folks from Abbotsford are in town for a pair of games. We've already given away tickets in the IC zone for that to see the Jets of tomorrow today. And that game starts at 2:00. And then, of course, like I said, the Illegal Curve post-game show right around 2:40. But right now, let's get into the Jets talk, because why not after the Moose game? I just did the Moose game. T. Conapauli's asking me about that, but it'll be a busy Saturday. Don't you worry. We'll have it covered for you here on illegalcurve.com and, of course, on our YouTube channel. So make sure you have smashed that like button, and also make sure you're subscribing. Many of you are. We always appreciate that. But if you haven't yet, please do so. It's always helpful for us to build up that subscriber base. Now,
that's the only way that you know that we're going to do a pop-up kidney stone show, Dave, right?
Exactly. If you want to know about Ezzy's kidney stone finally passing, you have to be subscribed.
Hopefully, I never have to talk about this again. And
the best will be like
again. I don't wish this on my worst enemy because, as I said, it's a 10 out of 10 pain. I know there are a few people in the chat that have had kidney stones. So again, let's talk about something a lot more positive and fun. That being the local hockey club.
It's too bad that actually the Jets didn't play Vegas, because then I could segue using a Mark Stone sort of reference, but I can't, unfortunately. So we'll have to.
We don't want to besmirch Mark Stone's name.
Yes. Well, anyway, so let's talk about we'll just briefly touch on the fact that the Jets, had a 1-1 week. When we look back, they beat a very good Rangers team, and then they lost to I call it a desperate, hungry Devils
Absolutely.
team.
Desperate is a good word.
Yeah.
If the Devils lose that game, they're not mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, Dave, but they, as you mentioned, they obviously needed that game a lot more than the Jets did.
That's right. And we saw it. And, Brendan Dillon had some choice words for his club after they gave up 3 power play goals. And I think that's probably a good thing because, it's interesting, Ezzy, right? One of the areas that we talked about that was a concern was their somewhat passive PK. And it's interesting because the Jets power play, special teams, we know that the 5-on-5 play for the majority of this year has been excellent, but the special teams was the big concern for the Jets. And so they got the power play working, but their PK is, I think it's either 25th or 26th in the league right now. And their power play is 21st, but it's improved. So, that's one of the things that the team is focused on. We know that they're going to make some lineup changes. We know that Nate Schmidt is going to come back in for Colin Miller. We know that Cole Perfetti, that's a subject of conversation I suspect Jets fans want to discuss. We talked about it a little bit last week, right?
That's
we said, what is the plan
he's
for
been
Cole
in the
Perfetti?
press box for a while now, right? So
4 straight games.
Yeah.
So he's missed 4 straight games. We know Mike McIntyre of the Winnipeg Free Press, who's on the road. He did a story with Cole Perfetti and talked about, what kind of impact this is having on Perfetti. And look, I mean, let's be realistic. Like I said, very very few prospects get a chance. Like Mark Scheifele went back to junior twice. Yep. Like we have to put everything into perspective. Kyle Connor was with the Jets and then got sent down and played with the Moose. Like it happened.
And also we should mention Scheifele did spend a little bit of time with the Ice Caps.
Yeah, he went
not a lot, but
that was during his OHL after the OHL season ended, and he went and played the playoffs with them. So you're right, but I'm just saying, like, guys have been dealt with disappointment. So it's not as if Cole Perfetti is somehow the first prospect in the Jet system to be disappointed with his, let's call it, lot in life. There have been many. And again, it's really how you respond and how you deal with it. And look, Cole Perfetti's going to have some things that he's going to need to work on in the summer if he wants to be an NHLer. And that's just part of your progression, your evolution. But I think, you're going to find, and I don't know, I want to get your take, Ezzy, you have to imagine that you're going to get a very motivated Cole Perfetti. And we don't know where he's going to be. We don't know who he's coming in for. Scott Arniel didn't share that information with Mike.
You'd have
just
to
know
think
that he's
it was
going
on
to
the
be
fourth
back
line,
in.
Dave.
I would think so too.
Yeah, like I realize that Gabe Velarde's still out, not on this road trip, but I don't think you're putting Cole Perfetti back into a top 6 role after being out the last 4 games. I think that's. I mean, again, I don't know. I'm the Jets outsider, as you know, but I think you would expect him to go on the fourth line simply because that's where he was playing last, right? Before he was a healthy scratch, he was playing on that fourth line with Barron and Nemesnikov, and we know Nemesnikov and Perfetti have had success together. Right. So I would expect Perfetti to play on the wing on the fourth line. And, I wouldn't expect many other changes. I don't think you're going to see any other changes in the forward group. You mentioned Nate Schmidt's coming back. He replaces Colin Miller, who the Jets, of course, acquired before the trade deadline. But I think, you're expecting 10 to 12 minutes out of Perfetti again this afternoon.
Well, again, the one thing that we've talked about, Ezzy, is the fact that, especially in that the Rangers game, was the fact that the Jets really had an even bench for the most part. I mean, obviously it wasn't significant, but you didn't have a fourth line playing only 6 minutes. And that, of course, is important because, it's important for a couple of reasons. One, you don't want to burn your team out, especially when you have a 3 and 4. And so we know that, like I said, everybody practiced yesterday. There's nobody. The only player who was missing was Nikolai Ehlers. And then I should read the quote from Scott Arniel because
it's okay, Dave. After scoring one of the nicest goals of the year, I think he can take a day off.
Well, for sure he did. And so he was asked about it by Mitchell Clinton, and he said, just a maintenance day for Nikolai Ehlers, had some things that were lingering. And given that they play 3 in 4 games, they didn't need him to, quote, this is funny. This is a funny quote from Scott Arniel, work on his skating. And so they prefer for him to be fresh against the Capitals and the Islanders and the Capitals. Who the Jets
are skating is weak for sure.
Yeah. And then, I mean, I know we don't want to spend too much time on his video game goal, Ezzy, but you got to credit Nikolai Ehlers for that one because, or as I called him inadvertently on Twitter, Nicholas Ehlers, even though my phone autocorrects the Nikolai, but somehow I wrote Nicholas inadvertently because I wasn't paying attention. Inattention to detail on Dave M. But that was probably, I have to think, Brendan Smith doesn't think this, Ezzy, but you got to think that's one of the nicest goals we'll see this season.
Well, Brendan Smith is on a milk carton right now because he's missing in action, right? Like, just incredible. Like, we've seen Nikolai Ehlers score highlight reel goals since he became a member of the Winnipeg Jets. We saw him score highlight reel goals, actually, Dave, going back to when he was with the Halifax Mooseheads.
Yeah.
That's why the Jets drafted him, 9th overall?
10th.
You were there. I should remember 2014 in Philly. Shout out to Philly Dan and Anthony.
Oh, you're talking about, sorry. You said you were talking about Ehlers. I was reading the chat was talking about Perfetti. So I'm like, no, he was, yeah. Go ahead.
I thought we were still talking about the Ehlers goal against the Devils, but
we could
talk about that for 10 minutes. It's just a combination of his skating, speed, and hands, and just how he has the ability to absolutely posterize opposing players, right?
Yeah.
So, just an incredible goal by Ehlers. Unfortunately for the Jets, they didn't get any more, right? And, look, we talked about it. We're not going to spend too much time. We're not going to spend too much time looking back at the Devils or my kidney stones. We're going to look forward to the Jets and to the Islanders, and then the Jets and the Capitals tomorrow. But look, a combination of the Devils' power play just clicking at a really high level, the fact that they were desperate, and the Jets didn't play very well, right? Like they just didn't. They didn't generate enough offense.
Except for Laurent Brossoit.
Yeah, Brossoit was good. And he almost broke the Jets 2.0 shutout record. I think it was Jets 2.0, right, Dave? I'm not sure if it was Jets 1.0 too.
No, 2.0.
So Brossoit has been just incredible. I mean, whether or not he gets his name on the Jennings Trophy, I know some people have brought that up. I think I am safe in saying this is the best goalie combo in the NHL. And I realize we're a Jets-based show, and I'm a little bit biased, but I think most people would agree. Just look at their numbers. Like, there's no drop-off. When Brossoit's in net for the Jets, there just isn't a drop. Like, there is a drop-off a little bit, but what I'm saying is it's not like you're going from, an excellent goalie to a mediocre goalie.
Right.
Brossoit's been excellent, and he might get himself a contract with another team as their starter next year for it, right? So you're right. Brossoit was excellent against the Devils.
Yeah.
And, against an Islanders team that is, they're floundering a little bit. They're still in the playoff race, but I think they've lost 3 in a row now.
They have.
But the Islanders are always a tough team. I mean, if you go back and you look at the Jets-Islanders games over the years, I'm talking about the last 13 years, and there's still some players, Dave, that have been around that, like Casey Cizikas and Cal Clutterbuck. I'm not sure if Cizikas is healthy right now. I'll have to check on that. But, I mean, they've got some guys like Brock Nelson. I mean, they've got players that have been there for a long time. Obviously, with Sorokin, they're really good in goal. They're well coached with Hall of Famer Patty Roy, right? So this is going to be a big test for the Jets. They're going to have to play. They're going to have to generate a lot more offense this afternoon than they did on Thursday night against the Devils. That's for sure.
Yeah, and you're right, Eddie. But similar to the Devils, the Islanders are one of those desperate teams, and the Capitals are as well. So I mean, the Jets are going to. This is not, even though these are quote. This is why I think you can't be that strict when you're looking at, this is not, the Jets have done this against playoff teams and this against non-playoff teams. Like Devils, Capitals, Islanders are all desperate hockey teams. So it's easy to, I think it's a little lazy to just call them, they're non-playoff teams. So these are teams you should beat. These are teams that are desperate for points and are hungry for wins. And right now the Islanders, as you said, Ezzy, they're not playing particularly well. They've lost 3 straight. They have a really interesting home record at UBS Arena. 15, that's okay. They've only had 9 losses. They've had 10 overtime or shootout losses. So if you take it to the extra time with these guys, there's a good chance you're going to win. They'll get a point, but there's a good chance you're going to defeat them. So that's a pretty significant stat when I saw that.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was getting at there, like not just the games between the Jets and the Islanders, but that's the type of team that the Islanders, I think, Dave, you would say are kind of like a lunch pail group, right? 100%. Like Matt Barzal is their best player, but I don't know, like, again, I don't even think it matters whether you want to consider him a superstar or not. He's an unbelievable hockey player. But what I'm saying is, like, I don't think you're going to say Matt Barzal is a top 10 forward in the NHL. Like, this is a group that scores by committee, right? We talked about Brock Nelson. We talked about Anders. We didn't talk about Anders Lee, but Anders Lee, I mean, he's always former 40-goal guy. He's having a bit of a down year. Noah Dobson is a guy, for Jets fans that don't know a lot about Noah Dobson. Noah Dobson is a first-round pick. I think he's 24 now. 12th overall pick back in 2018. He's got 65 points.
I know.
I mean, insane. He could easily hit 75 to 80 points by the time the season is over. I'm not sure if he's going to be a Norris finalist, because obviously there's a few other defensemen that are going to be in the conversation. But I'm safe in saying that Noah Dobson is a top 20 defenseman in the NHL at the very least, and could be a guy, no joke, that plays for Canada in the 2026 Olympics. He's that good. Like 65 points, you forget. I mean, the percentage of defensemen in the NHL that ever hit 65 points in their career, Dave, is like 20% or something. Right? Like 65 points is a good year for a forward. You know, so I'm just saying Dobson is a guy to look out for. Man, is he a great skater. Obviously, the Jets have a pretty good skater in Josh Morrissey, but Noah Dobson is second on the team in scoring after Matt Barzal with 70 points. And obviously, you know, Bo Horvat is a guy too we have to mention. But this Islanders team, again, I think the Jets are a deeper team. They're a better team. But obviously, it's going to be a fight. Like, this is going to be a fight. The Islanders are like the Devils, fighting for their playoff lives. The Jets are coming off of a disappointing loss. So far, the road trip has been pretty good. 2 wins out of 3. But obviously, you know, you with the second game of a back-to-back coming against the Capitals team that's also in the playoff race, I think, you know, this is a big one for the Jets. And this is going to go in a long way in seeing if the Jets can lock up first in the Central, right, Dave? Because I don't know if anybody's been noticing this, but the Avalanche are not losing any games. They've won 8 in a row, which is incredible. So right now, I mean, it's still a 3-way race, but it looks like the Avalanche are doing their best to pull away from the Jets and the Stars, right?
Well, and that's one of the things we were going to talk about, right, Ezzy? Because, and I've mentioned this a number of times, and I think it's the truth. I don't think I'm making a particularly insightful comment, but I'll restate it regardless. And I think it's that the Jets, this first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs, is going to be the best. It just can't be disappointing. Like the NHL
the Jets could play the Golden Knights in the first round. The Avalanche could play the Golden Knights in the first round. The Jets and Stars could play in the first round.
Nashville.
I mean, you look at Nashville. I wouldn't want to play Nashville right now. No, and you look over
16 straight games,
and you know, it could be the Rangers and the Capitals in the first round, or you know, it could be the Rangers and the Islanders in the first round. Like, there's so many. I mean, you're going to have obviously the Bruins and the Leafs in the first round, right? So I'm with you. I mean, let's just get the first round started right now, Dave.
Well, it's crazy to think, there's still 12 games to go. This is game 70 on the schedule for the Winnipeg Jets. But you know, you make a good point. Colorado's like that on fire team that nobody is talking about. And
sorry, Dave, the Bruins have actually passed the Panthers, so it would actually be the Panthers and the Leafs in the first round. So
which would be
bye Leafs.
Yeah, well, regardless, like it's just it's setting itself up to be just an unbelievable. Again, I don't think any of them are bad. No, you know, like it not one of them. You know, there's the story: is Detroit going to be able to hold on? And I know they've got a 3-point edge, I believe, on Washington, which goes to show you how important tomorrow's game is going to be for the Capitals. And although maybe it's not 3 anymore, because I know the Capitals won last night. Yeah, now it's down to 1.
I feel like I've got like the standings, like the NHL.com standings, like I have them like constantly open on my phone or my laptop. The Capitals have a game in hand on the Red Wings.
Yeah, that's right. So but again, that goes to show you how important tomorrow's game against the Jets is going to be for the Washington Capitals. So I think what I'm saying is that it's setting itself up to be just a phenomenal run to these postseason. And, you know, that's what the NHL wants ultimately. You know, we always talk about, you know, should there be 3-point games? Should you get 3 points for a win?
I mean, that ship has sailed. Dave, do you not want to see the best possible first round matchups? Like, I realize people say like Toronto was always in that unenviable position, right? Where they're usually third in the Atlantic.
Mhm.
So that's why they get a really tough matchup, because the Atlantic over the years has been one of the best divisions,
Yeah.
arguably the best division, right? With Tampa Bay, Boston, Florida, right?
Mhm.
But I don't know. I like seeing, like, I realize if you're a Jets fan, you don't want to play Dallas. Like, at least for me, I don't want to see Dallas and the Jets in the first round, because I think that Dallas is the best team in the Western Conference, personally. I realize
Mhm.
Colorado right now has won 8 in a row, and they're 1 point ahead of Dallas, or 2 points ahead of Dallas, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But I still would not want to play Dallas. I just think they're a complete team. But again, if you beat the Stars in the first round,
sorry, Dallas and Colorado, I think, are tied. They're 2 points up
tied.
on the Jets. Yeah,
2 points. Okay, yeah. See, it's like, that's what I'm saying. The standings, you have to follow it on an hour by hour basis, right? So I mean, the way I look at it, you could look at it 2 ways. You could look at it, Dave, like I said, like, you don't want to play Dallas or Colorado in the first round if you're the Jets.
Mhm.
But I also think if you beat one of those teams in the first round, you could make the argument that, okay, now you've beat one of the best teams in the entire league. Now you're pretty much unstoppable, right? So we know that the Jets are going to have to beat the Stars of this or the Avalanche either in the first round or the second round. That's inevitable. One of those teams they're going to face, most likely. So I think that I love the tough matchups in the first round personally. I used to not like that, but I mean, the reality is you're going to see tough matchups at some point anyway. So why not get them out of the way in the first round, I guess?
Well, I mean, look, I think what it ultimately comes down to, and this is my thought process, and again, I don't think it's revolutionary, but I think that if you're Winnipeg, the incentive to finish in first is that you'd rather see Colorado and Dallas. You're going to have to go through them eventually, but you want to see Dallas and Colorado pummel each other for that first round and give you a little bit of a, again, I don't think any of these teams are going to be a, quote, easier out. I think Nashville would prove to be an incredibly tough test. I think
we just saw the Jets lose to Nashville, right?
That's right. So that's what I'm saying.
I think the Jets beat Nashville in a 7-game series. I think they can.
Yeah.
They'll make adjustments, and I just think they have more talent. But absolutely, Dave. I mean, the Predators are not. I mean, who thought the Predators would have this many points? What are they up to? 87 points. I mean, they can hit. They could easily hit 100 points the way they're playing.
14-0-2 in their last 16 games, which is, again, it's remarkable because their AHL club started off January and into late February going 19-0 and 0 and 0. I'll add a 0 because they do 4 in the AHL. So the Milwaukee Admirals went undefeated in 19 straight games. And then it's funny, now they've lost a bunch. And their parent club, which, again, most folks would say is more important, has gone on a similar sort of run. And look, I saw the comment up by Pomerlin, and I agree. Like, I don't know that folks are sitting there agonizing over who the matchups are. But I think, I mean, I think you'd be...
I got you, Dave. There's the comment.
Thank you. But I would actually suggest that teams do focus on this to a certain degree. Like, they do look at their matchups and they say, you have to analyze this and say, well, what's the best for us, right? You have to be thinking from that perspective. You're not sitting there worrying and being like, oh my God, I agree with you in the sense that I think these teams think we can beat anyone. You have to have that mentality. You can't win a Stanley Cup worrying about your opponent.
This is a good comment by our good friend Craig Penner, who's often in the chat for the Saturday morning show and the post-game shows. Like, who saw the Jets sweeping the Oilers in the bubble year and then getting swept by the Habs? Like, nobody saw the Habs going to the Stanley Cup final, Dave, because if I'm not mistaken, the Habs were the lowest seed that year, weren't they?
I think so.
Like, during the regular season, the Habs in that Canadian division, the Habs were not a dangerous team, right? It was the Oilers who everybody was fearing because McDavid and Draisaitl, and we know who the superstars on that team are. So Craig Penner makes a good point. I mean, who saw the Panthers beating the Bruins last year? And the Bruins had, what did they have, 125 points during the regular season? I always go back to the Blue Jackets Lightning in 2019. That was the biggest shocker because that Lightning team was so stacked. And obviously they won 2 Stanley Cups after that. So you can say that was just a blip on the radar, right? But it happens every year. There's going to be an upset. It could be in the West. It could be in the East, right, Dave? But anyways, just thought that was a good comment by Craig Penner. I mean, it happens every year.
And I'm going to follow it up with Partisan Paul's comment because he writes, there is
what
no
is this
easy...
chat lunch, Dave?
Well, we like to involve the chat, Ezzy, and they're making good points. So we got to highlight them, and sometimes we got to mention them. And this one is a good one. There is no easy path to the cup. Good teams have been eliminated in the first round by underdogs since forever. Never mind the other good teams. So I think ultimately the point Ez and I are making is first of all, I think the idea is you want to be a home team. You want to start at home. You want to have that home ice advantage. The Jets have been a very good team at Canada Life. So,
and I would say, Dave, sorry, just quickly, I would say the Jets maybe have more of a home ice advantage over any other team. And that's a shout out to everybody watching and everybody that's going to be filling up Canada Life Center. Because I don't care what anybody says, that building, when it is rocking, is the loudest. So I think that alone, to have that, like, we were there in 2015, Dave, when the Jets 2.0 had their first playoff game against the Ducks. That was game 3. But in Minnesota, 2018, between the Jets and the Wild, I mean, so the Jets, that reason alone, they want that whiteout for game 1. They don't want to be on the road for game 1.
Which is exactly what I was getting at, is the fact that, again, if you're not going to finish first, you want to finish at least in second, and then at least have that home ice and get that opportunity. And yeah, again, it's going to be a crapshoot as to who you play. Will these teams stay hot? Will Colorado be able to stay hot for the next 12 games? Will Nashville? We'll see. That's why we watch the games. That's why we call the games. That's why we talk to guys like Jeff Hamilton of the Winnipeg Free Press to get his insight into what he thinks as we run into the playoffs. So we'll get that going. We'll head to commercial break, and then we'll welcome Jeff the Hammer Hamilton of the Winnipeg Free Press to join us here on the Legal Curve Hockey Show this Saturday morning. I'm Dave Nuke. He's Ezzy Ginsberg. These are some words from our fine sponsors. Welcome back. I may be a little out of breath. I just ran upstairs because I was having a nice
Dave, that was a bit of an extended commercial break. leaving Hammer waiting here.
Well, the Hammer just joined us, so we'll get to him in 1 second. But thanks for everybody for staying with us. And this is the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. I'm Dave Manuke. He's Ezzy Ginsberg. And this guy doesn't need any introduction but I'm going to give him one anyways. His name is the Hammer, Jeff the Hammer.
Gentleman.
He's not from Ottawa, but he sometimes covers teams in Ottawa, but he's
not from Hamilton either.
Not from Hamilton.
Lived in Ottawa for 4 years.
Lived in Ottawa. Lived in Ottawa, but I once made
was once considered Mr. Ottawa by a select group that we won't talk about.
There you go.
Mr. Rideau Canal, right, Jeff?
Absolutely. What's going on, Dave? What's going on, Stonesy? How are you feeling? How are you feeling, Ezzy?
Emma passed me a kidney stone, I think is the nickname we're going with here, Hammer.
Yeah, there you go. That's probably just as good. That will eventually just turn into Stonesy, I'm sure, as time goes on. But man, I don't have any personal experience, thankfully, but I feel for you, man. I feel for you. There you go.
I appreciate it, Hammer. I hope it never happens to you. I hope it happens to. I don't know. Look, this is what I said. I don't wish it upon my worst enemy, which, as you know, is Drew. So he hasn't had it either. But yeah, it just sucks, and I appreciate it, Hammer. I just, it was just, and it came out of nowhere. That was the craziest thing. Like, 1 second I'm sleeping, the next second I'm driving myself to St. Boniface Hospital at 1 a.m, vomiting outside of the emergency room. Right. So let me tell you though, if you ever want to see meth heads at 3 a.m, St. Boniface emergency room is the place to be, because there was a guy on meth. This is not funny at all, because meth is a serious problem. But let's just say that, like, again, going back to what I said about doctors, nurses, support staff, I mean, the things that they have to deal with, like, I feel like I got like a huge life lesson yesterday, Hammer, because the stuff that I saw sitting
out of your cozy little bubble there,
exactly. I was out of River Heights.
Realized there's a real world out there. Good for you, man.
No, but seriously,
it only took you what? Handful of decades.
Yeah, well, I have spent time in an emergency room before. I drank a little too much tequila at the grade 12 dance at Kelvin, so I have been in an emergency room before, but that was 25 years ago. But yeah, we're here to talk about the Jets, maybe a little Bombers, Hammer, but I appreciate the kind words, my man.
All right, well, let's get into that Jets talk, because Jeff, there's lots to talk about this hockey team. The ups and downs. They went 3 straight with wins. They lose to the Devils. What was your kind of initial assessment of this road trip and how the Jets have been playing of late?
Yeah, I think, it was really exciting to start off the road trip with a pair of wins. And then, of course, it looked like a bit of a letdown against the Devils, a team that you guys have already talked about is desperate to stay in the fight, if you even want to consider them there. I mean, they've had obviously a team that had a lot of high expectations. A team that's certainly kicking themselves that they didn't do everything to get Connor Hellebuck in the offseason, that's for sure. But you knew they were going to be desperate, right? I mean, you knew that they're playing playoff hockey now. And so I think, you get that high against the New York Rangers. And we've talked about this, on this show, on other shows. Like, it's hard to kind of take what, it's so funny, this business, right? Because they win that game, and then the whole narrative of this show is a bit different, right? They're riding on cloud nine. They lose a game, strictly, I wouldn't say strictly, but mostly on bad special teams. And now they're kind of like they're back to being a question mark, right? That's just the world of professional sports. And that's why you say each game is a chance to reset the narrative. I mean, they win today, and it's back to being that, that team that's ready for the playoffs in prime. Obviously there's some inconsistency issues, right? It's the one win, one loss kind of pattern that this team had been under for a while. And of course, you guys touched on it earlier, the records against playoff teams versus non-playoff teams, and beating those clubs that they're more likely to face in the next month or so than the teams that are ultimately probably looking towards next season. But at the same time, I'm just left with this one thought that, like, okay, so the Jets haven't had consistent special teams all season long, right? I mean, you guys are talking about where they stand in the league on PK and PP. It's in the bottom third of the league, and in PK, it's in the bottom, fifth of the league. But there's the inconsistent scoring for a stretch, where they couldn't seem to find the back of the net, and yet the Winnipeg Jets are still at the top of the Central. And it's just like, and it's, I laughed a little bit at a comment you made earlier, Dave, about being a little lazy about those non-playoff teams. But it's like, what do you think those fan bases are like? They hate, they hate their club. And you look at the Winnipeg Jets, and you look at it, it's so funny to me, because it's just like each result, becomes this like rolling ball of like, okay, are the Jets in trouble, after a loss, or the Jets are all of a sudden beasts after they beat the New York Rangers. And the reality is they're still very much in the thick of this first place race. They're still very much in controlling their destiny. But I also at the same time understand that reluctance from the fan base, or the, maybe some of the skeptics that look at some of the play, look at the, the down special teams, and try to counter that with what the positives are of this team: goaltending, 5-on-5 play for a long stretch. And they try to figure out, where does this team fit in the elite teams heading into the playoffs? And I think that's why and also it's like, this team hasn't done really anything since that 2018 run. So there's always that insecurity of a fan base that's like, well, are these guys for real? I think there's more evidence. I think this is the good news, and this wraps up my long-winded answers. There's more evidence of the positive that we've seen from this team than the negative. And I think that's kind of what this team's holding on to, and what I think that, they got to use this next 15, 14 games, whatever it is, to find that consistency. And this team's not going to back into the playoffs, and they're going to have a tough opponent first round regardless. But I think it's just finding that consistency, finding that chemistry, and ultimately being healthy heading to the playoffs that's going to make the biggest difference.
I agree with you 100%, Hammer. And I think the first game is probably going to give us a big indication of, where, maybe not the first couple games, because let's not forget the Jets handled Vegas pretty good in the first game, right? But yeah. I think to your point, like, once the playoffs start, and especially if the Jets get home ice and they come out with a big win over whoever it is, LA or Dallas, or whoever they play in the first round, could be Vegas again, right. Actually. Totally. If the Jets get up 1-0 in a series and then they go up 2-0, obviously we know what the stats are once a team goes up 2-0, right? So regardless of who they play, we're going to see. And again, going back to what you said about the 2018 run, it's so unfair to compare this year's team to last year's team because of how putrid they were in the second half of the season. It's apples and oranges, right? And I wanted to just switch from looking at the Jets from a macro level to talking about Cole Perfetti. We talked about him a little bit. He's going to play. Your colleague Mike McIntyre, of course, reported that Perfetti is going to be back in the lineup. We're not sure if he's going to be on the fourth line, but I think it's safe to say, you'd agree, Hammer, that that's where he was playing before. So probably he's going to go back there with Nemesnikov and Barron. Like, what are you expecting out of Cole Perfetti? Because I know that he has struggled. We all know that he has struggled, and I'm sure that you've seen these comments on social media ad nauseum that Perfetti's got to get stronger and everything like this, which I don't disagree with. Mm-hmm. But I think that there's possibly more to it here. Like, I look at a player, and again, it's easy for me to say I'm a scrub, but Perfetti obviously has a high.
Don't say that, Ezzy. You're valuable.
Well, I did once have 7.
You're good.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Hammer. I had 7 strikeouts for the River Heights Cardinals when I was 12. So I think I peaked in community center baseball when I was 12. Yeah. But I appreciate that. But Cole Perfetti's a little bit better of an athlete, I think it's safe to say. And I told Dave, I think Perfetti has 80 to 85 point upside in the NHL. I really do think he's that good offensively. He's 22 years old. I mean, the guy is still relatively, not relatively young for a 41-year-old like me. He's young. But what do you expect out of Perfetti? Do you obviously we hope that he stays in the lineup, but I think you'd agree he's got to show something on that fourth line, because you've got a guy like David Gustafsson, who I think you'd agree he's a pretty damn good hockey player, and there's also Rasmus Kupari. So I mean, Perfetti has competition here for a spot on the fourth line.
Yeah, so what do I expect from him? I expect from him to go in there and try to, not regain all his confidence in the first 2 shifts or whatever, but to go in there, just focus on the fundamentals of the game. I know that, I think, and that's probably what the coaching staff is saying to him, is just focus on the simple stuff. Don't try to do too much. Just find that consistency. Yeah. And I think it's an absolute battle for him. Obviously, you mentioned Mike. Mike's obviously out there on the road right now, and he has a piece on him. And, quotes right up at the top of the story about, admitting to having some dark days. And there's no doubt that that's true, in the sense that this is a guy who came in and benefited from everything that COVID offered his age group, right? I mean, he didn't have to go back to junior. He was able to play for the Manitoba Moose, as a 19-year-old or 18-year-old or 19-year-old. So he was able to, he was invited to the World Championships. Like there was a fast and furious rise for him. And then to have to deal with, multiple seasons of injuries, have to deal with inconsistency, have to deal with, those ups and downs. And then coming into this season, ultimately being projected by media, by his coaching staff, as a surefire top 6, that that a lot of people had him pegged as the second line center, that by the end of the season, that would be, it'd be Scheifele, Perfetti, and Lowry, or at least that was the, I don't think everyone was necessarily banking on that, but that was for sure the hope that he would, evolve into his natural position at center. And that was something he talked about wanting to do in training camp. So when you kind of couple all of the, things, that all the successes that he's had in this league, and he certainly has shown, not just glimpses, like more than just glimpses. He's certainly shown that he has the ability to, keep up in this league. He has the ability to make plays. He's made some individual plays that have resulted in goals. He had a hot start to the season. All those positives things, you group that with a lot of the challenges and hurdles that he's faced. And it's probably, and then you add on the fact that you're now a healthy scratch. I mean, the team is telling you that you do not give the club the best chance to win. That is what a healthy scratch is. This is the groups that we believe give us the best chance to win in a time of the season that is incredibly important. And so, of course, he's dealing with, the stress and frustration of not being part of this right now. Still a part of it, obviously, but not being, being on that ice, going to battle, if you will, with all his teammates night in and night out. And so I think for him, this is a huge challenge in his career. And to your point, Ezzy, he's only 22 years old. There's lots of growth to go here. There's lots of parts in his game that he needs to get better at. He needs to get quicker, right? A lot of that IQ, his strong hockey IQ allowed him to kind of hit the ground running when he first got here, right? Mm-hmm. But there's an element of catch up here, and he's going through something that a majority of NHL players go through, where you're kind of put on a pedestal. You're like, welcome to professional sports. Like, you start lighting it up, you're everybody's hero. You're the king. You go a couple games and you don't score points. Guess what? Your best friends are now your worst enemies. And it is a challenging thing to navigate as a professional athlete, as somebody. And I think, and this is where I think Perfetti will. This is why I believe he'll get through this, and not just get through this, but be successful through this. Is like, anyone who's ever had a conversation with this kid from when he first got onto the scene till now, like, he is an incredibly mature guy. He's a guy who, he gets it, if you will, for lack of a better explanation. But this is a person that, this is a person who I think is going to, going through these highs and lows, he's going to get better out of it, from it. This is going to be something that he looks back on his career in, years later, and reflects on those experiences, and how we're going to eventually read stories about how that part of his time of his career formed him into the player he is, and how he's now coaching other players to go through these things. And so, I just think for him, it's trying to figure out that massive disappointment right now, right? To have these great expectations for this season and thinking that you were only going, naturally only going to get better as time went on, and now to be in March in the thick of a playoff race and in a fight for first place in the Central, not be part of that is just another challenge. An obstacle that, yes, he's got to get through, but if he can do that, and I think he will come out of it ultimately stronger for it.
Well, you'll be reading about that in years to come in the Winnipeg Free Press, and Jeff Hamilton will be most likely writing some of those words alongside his colleagues Ken Wiebe and Mike McIntyre. But we have Jeff joining us here this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're talking about the Jets and Islanders. Get going at 12 o'clock after the game. You'll join Ezzy and I back again at around 2:40 for the Illegal Curve post-game show. Maybe Jeff will join us. We don't know. Who knows? But right now, we'll talk about these Jets and continue.
Yeah. It only starts in 2 hours, Jeff. So just finish off your breakfast and then come back with us.
Well, boys, if that was the case, it'd be a triple threat because I've already committed to Kenny and Rennie this afternoon.
Just so you know, Kenny and Rennie go on after we do.
That's what I'm saying. I wasn't saying it was impossible. I'm saying it would be a triple threat, and I think one show is probably enough for a majority of the fan base. Having three might be overload.
Well, Hammer, we can't compete once they start throwing that Kenny and Rennie money around. Like we can't compete with that. Their budget is much higher than ours.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, that doesn't speak to how high their budget is. It speaks to how low yours is. So it's don't say it's not all glamour in this biz, right?
Exactly. So Jeff, going back to the Jets and what is your kind of read since the trade deadline a couple of weeks back, the addition of Tyler Toffoli and obviously Sean Monahan as well, but Monahan's been with the team, it seems like the entire year, but the additions of the team and Colin Miller, obviously his depth, that's not as significant, but from your perspective, the additions of Sean Monahan, the additions of Tyler Toffoli, and I'm going to do a two-parter here. Of those two players, or maybe including both those players, do you see them, either one of them, coming back or signing a longer deal with Winnipeg next year?
So first part, I had said when they picked up Sean Monahan that I thought that was a great pickup, right? I mean, there's risk there, of course, in that he's had some health issues, but he has some existing health issues. Like he's a player that will require maintenance every season. Like he's not a guy that's coming in any season in the future and is going to be, there needs to be, care, if you will, for his body. But he's a cerebral player. He's a multi-dimensional player, much like Tyler Toffoli is. He can play different situations. And of course, he solidifies the second center spot. Like the Jets couldn't, as good as they were, they couldn't go into the playoffs without an established second line centerman, moving up, a Nemestikov. I mean, while there were certainly examples, we're still talking about a team here that's fighting for first place. So you got to give credit for the guys that stepped up in at those times where they didn't have that centerman. But that was always a big question. And to bring in a guy who, like Sean Monahan, who's been in the league, is a veteran, has had success in this league, makes his line mates better, can do everything that you need a second line centerman to do. That was a huge pickup. And of course, you started to see it pretty early on. And I think that's what you were looking for, right? Because we've seen so many things in the past, so many trades in the past, not just here in Winnipeg, but obviously other teams where it seems like a really good pickup, name recognition fills a hole. And it's kind of like, like it doesn't really pan out the way you want it to be, right? And I think, and all these things I'm saying, you can just put Toffoli's name on it. So I don't have to say all those things again, like the versatility, the ability to play other positions or other roles. Obviously, Tyler Toffoli brings a trigger-happy player. I think that's what the Jets needed, someone who's just going to shoot. I think if you've ever watched this team, whether it's this year or less so this year, but certainly this year and other years in the past, how many people will just stop making that third pass? Tyler Toffoli isn't going to make that third pass. He's going to shoot the puck. And he, and his success was early on. And then to have him have that experience with Sean Monahan, not just from, their time in Calgary together, but their time in Ottawa and the OHL together, like that's a pretty, you want that chemistry, and that exists already. And so that's a really good thing. And then to kind of round it out, the first answer is that they're both good guys. They're both good players. None of them have reputations of, being that, like, a lot of the times, and it's not just limited to the NHL, it's also every league, is that sometimes talent supersedes a little bit when they're evaluating the personality, and that's when things start to clash too. So you have two guys that come in, and there's that they want to be here. They're whether we'll touch on the future here, but whatever the future has in store, these guys want to be here right now for this run. They're excited. They're joining a team that's excited, and so I think all around they're absolutely great pickups, and they filled those two needs. I mean, we've been talking forever that if Kevin Cheveldayoff didn't pull the trigger on a centerman and a top six winger, what the hell is he doing? What the hell is he waiting for? Well, he did that, and he picked up two guys that have certainly gelled and have shown it early. As for what we could look for in the future, I don't know, guys. I think it's tough for both of them to come back. Not necessarily, for a couple different reasons. I think Tyler Toffoli will be too expensive. I think he'll want to be looking for the highest dollar. I don't think, and rightfully so. The guy's going to come off 2 back-to-back 30-goal seasons. He's up there in age. He needs to maximize his contract. So he's probably going to sign a 3-4 year deal for $6 million, $6.5 million somewhere else. Do the Jets have that money? Maybe, probably not. They'd have to do some configuring with their roster. Sean Monahan, I'd say would be more likely, and I think he would be the need that the Winnipeg Jets have, and I think he would come at a price tag that's cheaper than Tyler Toffoli. But the problem with Sean Monahan, I've been hearing this from very beginning, even before he was traded, is that he has a very strong connection to the Montreal Canadiens. He loves Marty St. Louis. I know he's not with the team right now, but he loves what he's building there. He loves Schwartz's. Yeah, totally. He loves Montreal. Who doesn't? You only have to fly over it to know how great Montreal is. But it's you look at like he wants to be part. Apparently, he wants to be part of that rebuild. Like, I think he's established, but that might change. Like, if they go far in the playoffs here, he might get that taste of playoff hockey and want to go to better teams. But I also think he thinks the Montreal Canadiens are building to get somewhere. I think he wanted to be a part of that. So the only roadblock, or one of the main roadblocks I see in the Winnipeg Jets retaining him in the future, is his desire to go back to Montreal. But again, I don't think that's a surefire thing. The Jets have him in the building. They have the opportunity to show him what he can bring here. They have the opportunity to pay him, a fair raise on what he's already, what he's making on his current deal. And so they have the ability to convince him, right? They have, but whether they'll be able to do that is another thing altogether. But I wouldn't rule either of them out. But I do think each player has its own individual hurdles to get over to leading to a future contract beyond this season.
You make some really good points, Hammer, because you're bang on when you talk about Toffoli's contract, right? Like, he's going to get, like you said, $5 to $6 million, a 3 to 5 year contract. The Jets are going to have to pay. We know who the pending UFAs are. We know that Scheifele and Hellebuck are going to make more money. And also, I think you make good points about Monahan. Even though Perfetti could be your future second line center, Monahan gives you a lot of stability to have Scheifele, Monahan, Lowry, 1, 2, 3. So right now, I mean, obviously we can revisit this after the playoffs are over, but I would say there's a better chance, like you said, of Monahan re-signing with the Jets than Toffoli, but we'll see what happens. I want to kind of flip the script here and talk about a defenseman who Dave knows is my favorite player on this Jets team. And like, to me, Dylan Samberg coming back into the lineup against the Rangers, making that play, and he didn't have any points in that game. So you're not going to see him on the highlight reel. And Dave is the Moose insider, but just every time I watch Samberg, when he was a healthy scratch, I said to Dave, I'm like, he's the last guy that should be coming out of the lineup. Like, he's been Mr. Consistency at 24 years old. Like, and I think if Brendan Dillon isn't on your team, and I'm not saying that the Jets aren't going to re-sign him, I think he's easily good enough to be a second pairing defenseman. I think he's good enough to be a first pairing defenseman. He's not going to give you a lot of offense.
Tucker Pullman 2.0 or what?
No, absolutely not, Hammer. But the question I wanted to ask you is just, do you think that he's underappreciated, not just across the league, but almost underappreciated here by how good of a defensive defenseman he is? Like, look at the numbers, the expected goals when Samberg's on the ice, whether he's playing with Nate Schmidt or whether he's playing with Colin Miller or whoever. I mean, Samberg's one of the best third pairing defensemen in the league. And when you talk about long playoff runs, you need to have 6 really good defensemen, which the Jets obviously have. I guess all I wanted to say is, are you as big of a fan of Dylan Samberg as I am? I just think he's an incredible defenseman.
Do I have the same custom poster that came from a JPEG from my photographer above my bed right now? No, I don't. But I would say this, Ezzy, I don't disagree with you. I think you're overplaying it a little bit, but that's only credit to what he's been able to do this year. Like the stabilizing presence that he's been this year. Like, you remember last year, man, this guy dealt with injuries. Like, he didn't really get like his full shot, right? Like, he came out of it, but there was always, last year was supposed to be his breakout year and whatever. And like, he there was still obviously glimpses of that and stability with him, but this year it's taken to a whole new level. And like, I liken him to Morgan Barron in a certain respect, right? Like, Morgan Barron has a lot of success on the fourth line, chips in a goal, every once in a while, and all of a sudden everybody's being like, let's put this guy in the top 6. You know what I mean? Like, this guy deserves whatever. Or maybe he's just doing really damn good on the fourth line, and that's not a problem. With Dylan Samberg, there's no doubt in my mind that his what he's been able to show, his progression is going to lead up the depth chart on D for this team. And if you look at just go to why he was the healthy scratch, it's fairly obvious. He's a healthy scratch because he's the youngest. And I know fans aren't going to like this, but politically speaking, in the dressing room, you're going to take out him and Nate Schmidt, your bottom forward, before you take out Brendan Dillon, before 100%. You take out Neil Pionk, before you take out Dylan DeMello, and sure as hell before you take out Josh Morrissey, because those conversations would exist if you took those other guys out, right? It was like, and those guys are only going to be out if they're banged up, injured, yada, yada. So there's a little bit of a political numbers game here when it comes to every single dressing room. And the reality is look, it's game. There's also an element of load management here, right? Like, let the guy sit out for a game and then get him, he came back in. Stanley didn't come back. You know what I mean? Like, he's back in. They probably sit him down and say, look, we just traded for Colin Miller. We need to get him in the game. We need to get some chemistry brewing here. You're the odd man out, but you're going right back in. Like, he probably had a meeting with the kid and said, there is nothing that you've done that warrants being taken out of the lineup outside of the fact that we need to get some guys into the lineup. And the reality is, if one of those top 4 guys is banged up or is playing at a whatever 80% level, then you probably see one of those guys come out. And they picked the game strategically, right? It was against the Ducks and the Blue Jackets, 2 teams that you knew you're going to beat. 100%. And there's and what occurred in the last week and a half is not going to be indicative of what's going to happen in the playoffs. Dylan Samberg is going to be a regular player probably throughout the rest of the season here. He might miss a game or 2 down the stretch, but again, it might just be to secure his health for the playoffs, and that is a testament to his his evolution this year, how well he's progressed. I mean, and he's what the Jets want and need in a D-man. He's physical. You're right. He's not going to pop on, the highlight reel, but he's not, it's not like he has no offense. Like, he does bring that element to a certain degree, but he's a stay-at-home D-man. He's a physical D-man. He can play penalty kill. Like, he's a guy he is an example of a guy who's growing into himself in confidence. Now, I don't mean that literally. I just mean I mean he's growing into the player that he's becoming. He's evolving at that age where he's finally hitting his stride and you're right. There's going to be some decisions, perhaps tough decisions made in the offseason to where a Brendan Dillon fits in. I think Brendan Dillon belongs on this team. Maybe he goes down to the third.
I do too, Hammer.
You know what I mean? So maybe it's a jump there, but I think those 2 guys are kind of what the Winnipeg Jets need they need those kind of guys, right? Like, they need that kind of toughness, physical D-man. Neil Pionk doesn't bring that, nearly to what he used to bring, in years past. Josh Morrissey, no one's expecting him to lay those punishing types of hits he used to do earlier in his career when he was more of a defensive defenseman. Like, so they need those kind of stay-at-home guys, and both have been really valuable. Dylan Samberg just happens to be significantly younger and on the precipice of becoming an everyday, top, second pairing, potentially, Ezzy, who knows, one day maybe even a first pairing defenseman, whether it be on the Winnipeg Jets or in the NHL in general.
I'm going to keep reaching for that rainbow, Hammer.
Yeah, and you should be, man. You should be. It's this is dream big, man. Dream big. I'd never stop you.
This has been the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're going into OT with the Hammer, Jeff Hamilton from the Winnipeg Free Press. I'm going to ask Jeff one more question, then we'll head to break. Jeff, I do wonder, because it's been brought up, it's been a lot talked about, of course, the Spitting Chicklets comment about the Jets being frauds.
Right.
So my question, and it's enraged.
That was for sure
base.
Jack Eichel, by the way.
Well, we don't know for sure, Ezzy, but we can speculate, and that's what I was going to get to.
I thought it'd be Jordan Binnington.
Could be. Like there's a lot of options, right? We know it's someone on the West. I guess the comment aside, my question to you is, do you think that's the thing that permeates into the locker room and kind of galvanizes his team? Or do you think it's outside noise, it doesn't impact them? Because it's not us in the media saying it. It's not a fan base saying it. No, it's your fellow NHL players saying it. So do you think that's something that's going to get into the room? We haven't asked the players about it, but do you think that's something that they're thinking about? We're frauds, and that's going to be their kind of impetus to really go on a run? Or do you think it's just like, okay, well, it's just guys, it's just a bunch of guys who are, spitting chiclets and that's about it?
So probably what they tell you is it doesn't bother them. You know what I mean? If you were to ask, you'd be like, oh, that's each person has their opinion. We certainly don't agree with that. Yada, yada, all the typical talking points that you would say in that situation.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to let them know, you don't want anyone to let you know that it affected you, that, you're living rent free, all that, whatever you want to use to describe it. But there's no doubt in my mind that these guys are pissed off about it, they know exactly who said it. Not like, I don't know if they know exactly who said it as far as the anonymous player, but there's a certain, it's one thing if you were to, if I was to report, from a, anonymous player that, they consider the Jets frauds and yada, yada. It's a whole other thing when it's Ryan Whitney on one of the most popular, hockey podcasts that I imagine a lot of Winnipeg Jets players listen to, and Jets players are on social media. They'd see it the same way you and I would see it. It would be popped all over the place. So the idea, and you hear about these guys don't read and they don't listen and they don't watch. We
know that's not true.
Yeah, I have a long felt theory that when they're not playing their sports, they're Googling their own names. So it's like, I'd probably do the same if I was bored and had a lot of money. So like, unfortunately I have neither. So like whether it's used as a rallying cry, I think it can be, I think it should be, I don't think it's one that you play in the media. Like you don't have this, this exchange or war of words and talk about it. But I think inside I wouldn't be surprised if someone like Rick Bowness used it. You know what I mean? Like a coach used it. Like here we are, you got guys around you calling you frauds. Like I would use it as a coach.
Absolutely.
There's some guys going around here saying that you guys are frauds. Tell them to come take it from you. You know what I mean? Like, let's go. Like, if you can't get behind that, I don't know what, what's the point? But, at the same time, I saw the comment, I think it's funny in the sense that like anyone can say anything to anybody. And like, obviously it's coming from somebody, it's not some Joe Schmo anonymous player. I don't think Ryan Whitney would just bring this up for the sake of bringing it up. So obviously somebody notable said something about it and we can all speculate on who that potentially could be. A lot of people think it was PLD. I don't think it was. It's funny because as much as like, and rightfully so, fans don't like how Pierre-Luc Dubois exited and not wanting to be here. And of course, no fan base is going to be cool with that. He still liked his teammates. Like, I just don't see him necessarily say that. Now, if it came out and it was him, like, yeah, okay. Like, it wouldn't exactly.
If it was him, Hammer, that would actually be one of the funniest things ever.
Well, to be honest with you, like,
your ex-team of friends.
But here's the thing, like that, I don't think it's him because I think he's selfish in a lot of ways, and I think you have to be selfish in some ways in this league to get the best out of your life and whatever. I wouldn't take away him caring about his teammates. Pierre-Luc Dubois wasn't the guy who was running around the top, hanging out with the top line guys. Like he did, obviously, but he was friends with everybody on the roster, and so I just don't see him throwing that kind of shade at the Winnipeg Jets. But that's beside the point. Whether or not it's used as a rallying cry, I think it can be. Who knows if it will be? But obviously, somebody out there is looking at the Winnipeg Jets and thinking that whatever they're doing this year isn't for real.
Well, we know what was for real, and that was just a hell of a good segment from Jeff, the Hammer Hamilton, with Ezra Stonesy Ginsburg. His name will live on in infamy. Anyways, Jeff, thanks very much for spending part of your Saturday morning here with us on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We appreciate your time and your insight.
Thanks a lot, guys. Always a fun time to hash up, different topics on the Jets, and we'll do it again sometime in the future.
Thanks, Hammer. And just remember, you're not going to get the same love from Kenny and Rennie that you get from us. Kenny and Rennie are great guys. We have them on the show. They're good friends, colleagues, if you will, if I'm allowed to say that. even though I'm not a journalist per se. I do have a journalism diploma from Red River College. No big deal. C's get degrees. Yeah. Totally. But you're not going to get the same love from those guys. Just remember that, Hammer.
Oh yeah, no, they're dead to me after a show like this, man. You know, it's tough. It's like going to the hot tub to the cold tub, man. It's gonna be a challenge to do that later on today. But I'll try to summon as much insight and takes as I can, and bring some excitement to a show that probably could use it after not seeing me for a while. So we'll see.
There you go.
Absolutely, and probably the next time you come on, Hammer, we're gonna have Bombers training camp to talk about, which is very exciting.
Yeah, right around the corner, man. I can't believe it. I'm looking forward to summer as much as anybody, and that's after what was not even that bad of a winter, but. Definitely welcoming the warmer climates coming in, of course, CFL football.
Well, we'll talk to you very soon. We appreciate that, Jeff. Jeff will be joining Kenny and Rennie after, of course, the Illegal Curve postgame show, which gets started around 2:40. All right, Jeff, enjoy the rest of your Saturday. We'll talk to you very soon. And for now, we're going to head to commercial break to hear from our sponsors. Thanks, Jeff.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Whoa, Ezzy, everything okay? You look stressed.
Of course I'm stressed. We're moving, the house is upside down, the kids failed miserably at packing the fine china, and my life is in chaos. Chaos!
Yes, that does sound like a problem.
What am I going to do?
Ezzy, relax. Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage is the answer. With 60 years of experience in moving Manitobans and a track record of exemplary customer service, one call to Rolly's and your stress is gone. No job is too big or too small. Just visit Rollies.com and they will take it from there.
Thanks, Dave, and thank you, Rollies Transfer Moving and Storage, online at Rollies.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go...
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
Boston Pizza harnessed Fanalytics to test if the game is better at home or at Boston Pizza. The results are irrefutable. Catch the game at Boston Pizza. Powered by Fanalytics.
We did it again!
You're on fire, man.
There's power in a handshake after a great game or great deal. It shows professionalism and respect. Two qualities Zappia Group Realty take pride in. You don't build a business where 95% of your clients are referred by others without honesty, integrity, and total dedication to client satisfaction. To sell your home for more in less time, shake hands with Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Get started at ZappiaGroup.com.
Welcome back. We went so long on commercial break there, as that it actually went to no more music. Woo!
We're just really excited. I missed the last two post-game shows.
Yeah.
So we're having our little, break chats, our little intermission chats. And we're talking a little bit too much and we lost track of time there, but let's get back to it, Dave. I'm ready to go here. Hammer was awesome.
Hammer was
Let's
good.
Hear it in the chat for Jeff Hamilton, an excellent writer, extremely handsome, and definitely one of the top guests on the IC Hockey Show.
Well, there you go. Anyways, this is the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We do thank Jeff Hamilton of the Winnipeg Free Press for joining us this morning to share his insight and his opinions on the local NHL club. If you didn't get a chance to join us live, you can always watch the replay on our YouTube channel. It's available right now. In fact, you could actually go back in time, watch that interview, and then eventually maybe you'll catch up. We'll be done. We won't be live anymore, but you'll catch up.
Shout out to our boy Dave Shore. He's texting me about my kidney stones. He just texted me, "How's my Zach Hyman doing?" Which I thought was pretty funny. But Dave Shore, of course, from Winnipeg, but now living in beautiful Southern California. So shout out to Dave, who's listening live in a much hotter place than we're in right now, because it is not very nice here in Manitoba. It's still old man winter, Dave, is not going away quietly. Let's just put it that way, right?
That's a fair point. And, but it looks like, again, I'm not a meteorologist. Don't call me John Sauter, but if I believe next week it's supposed to be warmed up again. So that little interlude was nice that we got a couple weeks back where it was like plus 11 at one point. But we'll get back there. And
the only good thing, Dave, about this weather, like the snow's melting and then it's cold, is that nature has actually provided me with an ODR in my backyard. Like you can actually skate on my lawn in the backyard. It's like perfectly now just like a sheet of ice. So that's the one positive. But yeah, I think, it's March, what is it, the 23rd today? I think, people in Manitoba, on the prairies here in Canada, like we're ready for spring. Like it's been a mild winter, but it's still been a long winter. Like after 4.5 months, like you're good.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think there's any question. The geese are flying back into town. That's the Harbinger. No, why can I not pronounce it? I'm about to have a stroke right now. Yeah, there you go. Harbinger of good weather. So, well, it would have been a good word if I said it properly the first time, but struggled a little bit there. Thankfully, you got my back, as you always do, as does Luis Batista, telling you don't forget to hit that like button. It helps support this channel. And if you're listening on the podcast, like thousands of you do after the show, nothing stopping you from coming to our YouTube channel, smashing that like button. So we always appreciate when folks do that. Makes us feel good on a Saturday morning, talking hockey. Game 70 on the schedule in East Meadow, New York, Belmont Park, to see the Jets and the Islanders. That gets underway in under 2 hours, and of course, after the game, where you should always be, the Illegal Curve post-game show with me, with Ezzy and I. Drew, of course, is flying off to parts unknown. We don't know what parts he's flying to, but sunnier parts than here in Winnipeg. So anyways, let's get back into it.
I'll give you a hint. It's the state where Ron DeSantis calls home.
Sorry. Hold on. Uno momento correction. I said Luis Batista. It's Louis Batista.
Well, I was also going to say, Louis, you got to send me an email, Ezra@illegalcurve.com, because you want a tough tech, hardest hitting comment, Took. And I don't think Louis ever emailed me. So you got to email me.
There you go, Louis.
Took, man.
Louis. There you go. Make sure you email Ezzy, give him your address, and you'll get a Tough Duck toque. And hey, like we were just talking about, the weather's still good enough that you're going to need that Tough Duck toque for the next little bit. We've been giving away Moose tickets, Ezzy. The Moose are in action. It's going to be a busy hockey day here on illegalcurve.com. Well, this isn't illegalcurve.com, but it kind of is, because that's us. And so, of course, the website is your source for Jets and Moose news anytime, 24 hours a day. Even if we're not on this show live, you can always get your Jets and Moose news at illegalcurve.com.
Almost 20 years now of the website, Dave. We're gonna have to throw a big party when the website hits 20, because we're almost at 18 now, right?
Yeah. Yes. No, 17. I think this is our 17th year. So yeah, it's been a wild ride, and the website is rolling. And speaking of the website, and speaking of ways to be involved, and Stacy, I haven't texted our merch guy yet, so I'm going to get into Stacy's in Pennsylvania, and she was trying to order some merch, and apparently there was a problem.
Stacy wants to rock that merch in Erie.
Exactly.
Stacy's our biggest fan in Pennsylvania. She's trying to get it. She's trying to get us hot in Pennsylvania, right, Dave?
Exactly. So, but Stacy was trying to order some merch, and I was just going to say, for all of those who want to order some IC merch, the store is open for another week. So get those orders in. I'm going to post a link right now in the chat so you can.
So weather report from Stacy now. For those listening on the podcast, she's saying that they got some snow in Erie, but not that much.
Well, there you go. There's a link. I just posted it in the chat. So if you want to go and check that out, we've got, I believe, up until April 1st. So the end of March, you have another week or so to go to order your IC merch. And you can rock it like I'm wearing it, or Ezzy's wearing it, or we're wearing it we wear it everywhere. We represent the brand. Sometimes it's a little bit obvious. We're like walking billboards, but that's okay.
I only wear two types of shirts, Dave. I wear Illegal Curve shirts, or I wear Kirkland signature shirts.
There you go. Well, we appreciate
that's Costco for those who don't know that.
There you go. But we prefer when you're wearing the Illegal Curve one. So let's talk about the Jets again, Ezzy. Let's keep this chat rolling. Let's talk about, what do you want to talk about now? I mean, there's it's interesting. We kind of hit that point in the season. I guess one of the things we should mention, because we didn't mention it on the post-game show the other day, and I thought it was notable. And it was that, Elliot Friedman reporting on Gabriel Velarde. And I know that folks, for some reason, thought that they wanted to question the reporting, but I mean, obviously, Elliot Friedman is as good and he's not as dialed in with the Jets as Darren Dreger.
Elliot knows more than the teams know. Okay, like there's no and same thing goes for guys like Darren Dreger, Pierre LeBrun,
Frank Saravalli, who
we're having on in about 20 minutes. Chris Johnston, aka CJ, who we've had on the show many times. Like these guys know even more than you think they know. So that was huge, Dave. And I'll let you continue. But knowing that Gabe Vilardi could be back either, towards the end of the regular season or for the first round of the playoffs is huge. Because Huss and Remus were joking about this. Like everybody's kind of, Googling ruptured spleen, or pardon me, enlarged spleen.
Yeah, enlarged.
And everything, and how long that means that he could be out and everything like that. But that was big news because honestly, we hadn't received anything from the team. So we had no idea what the status, if any, if there was an update on Vilardi, because Rick Bowness, all he said was he wasn't going on the road trip, right?
Yeah, and so we just to get here's Friedman's comment. It came courtesy of his 32 Thoughts article, and he said Winnipeg is operating under the assumption. Of course, we all know what happens when you assume that Gabriel Vilardi will. He said Gabe Vilardi, but Gabriel Vilardi will return this season, which is great to hear. It's been a tough year for Gabriel Vilardi because he's only played in 38 games. He's missed 30 games or 31 now, and this will be his 32nd as when I wrote this. But he's missed a lot of games for the Jets. He's looked good when, of course, he played. Then he had the MCL sprain in Game 3 caused by his former teammate Blake Lizotte in their connection here in Winnipeg. And then, of course, he was out after that third period in the Dallas game at the end of, I think that was February 29th. And, of course, we weren't sure what it was. It's just the whole chronology of this whole situation is weird. We're not going to dissect it too significantly. But it's just, again, he stayed on the bench, which I thought, well, that's odd. He stayed on the bench. Usually if a guy's injured, he leaves, stays on the bench. Then, we think he could play. He's not, Rick Bowness, they practice in Texas the next day for that game against Carolina on the Saturday morning. And Rick Bowness says he could be a player. And then, of course, after that game against Carolina where they came back and won, we find out that Gabriel Vilardi is back in Winnipeg. And then through the nature of doing some investigations, they determined that he has this enlarged spleen. So, and again, there's no timeline as to his return. And so you're kind of left questioning whether Gabriel Vilardi, and obviously his health, his long-term health is more important than hockey. But I just thought it was a significant statement from Elliot Friedman, just to give that idea that the team obviously, like he again, despite what some folks might suggest, he's not making this up. He doesn't just say, one day, I think I'm going to make up a rumor that Gabriel Vilardi is returning. Like, that's not what these guys do. And so if he's saying it, he's saying it on authority. And so, yeah, it's a good thing for this Jets club, because remember what I think it needs to be reminded to folks is he's your top line right winger. And so right now you're operating with Alex Iafallo, who has stepped up admirably and he's trying to play a role. But again, how much deeper?
Super pest. That's what I would call Iafallo. He's the forechecking super pest.
Well, exactly.
I still think Iafallo fits in okay there, Dave. I just wonder, especially if, let's say Vilardi's out for the next 5 to 10 games.
Mm-hmm.
I still think Nemesnikov or even Nino Niederreiter, just to provide you with a little bit of offense. Obviously, it wasn't an issue against the Rangers, but it certainly was against the Devils. They only had, 17 shots, the Jets I'm talking about, obviously.
Yeah.
So I think with Iafallo, the thing with Iafallo is, again, people are sick of hearing this a little bit, but when you talk about the F1 getting in there and creating turnovers and a little bit of havoc so that guys like Scheifele and Connor can pick up the puck and make their plays, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's the best fit, but for a short-term fix, Dave, I don't mind Iafallo up there. I just think Nemesnikov gives you a little bit more offense, a little bit more creativity. And obviously, Nino Niederreiter, you could say the same thing, right? He's got the size. He's a shooter. He can crash the net. He gives you that element. But we'll see what happens. I mean, these next two games are going to be a big indication, right? If the Jets win these games and Iafallo plays well on the top line with Scheifele and Connor, Bowness most likely sticks with it. But maybe you see the Nemesnikov for Iafallo switch from the fourth line to the first line, Dave, is always there, right?
Yeah, and you have, look, the one thing with this Jets club that we've talked about is you have that depth. You have the luxury of being able to flip guys. A guy like Vlad Nemesnikov, who was on your second line, then on your first line, and now he's on your fourth line. If you need him, you can throw him in there. And so that's huge, and that's a big benefit for this team. I'm just thinking, I'm just suggesting that if you can get Gabriel Vilardi back, and if he can be, in there for the last 5 games of the regular season and then ready for playoffs. It's such a significant addition to this Jets club. And it's not, again, they're doing this, they're maintaining where they are, and they've made the additions of Monahan and Toffoli. But like I said, if you put this full Jets forward depth when healthy against all the other teams, right? If you put
I think it's second to none. I really do.
That's what I'm saying. Like you once you have Velarde up with Scheifele and whomever, if it's Kyle Connor, it's Kyle Connor. And then you have Foley, Ehlers, and Monahan. Then you have the third line of Niederreiter, Lowry, and Appleton. And you've got Barron, Nemesnikov, and Iafallo. I mean, that's as deep as this Jets club from a forward perspective.
Absolutely.
I think Ezzy has ever been.
Yeah, absolutely. I think maybe the high end skill is maybe a little bit less than that 2018 team, right? Because you had Patrick Laine and Blake Wheeler in your top 6, for example, right?
In their prime.
Prime, right?
Well,
Wheeler for sure in his prime. And I mean, it's Laine was pretty damn good back in 2018, right?
Yeah.
So I think you would maybe say the high end skill on that Jets team is better, but the overall depth, right? Like the fourth line back in 2018, what was it, Dave? It was Matty Perreault. You had Brian Little there, right on the fourth line once they acquired Paul Stastny. But regardless, I think, going back to Gabe Vilardi, I mean, you see the importance of Vilardi in the lineup because of the hole that it creates in the top 6. And yes, we go back to Iafallo. He's done an admirable job. Maybe we see Nemesnikov there. Maybe we see Niederreiter there. I don't necessarily...
Yeah,
there you go.
Joel one-man Armia.
Absolutely. So that 2018 team, look, it went to the West Finals. It almost went to the Stanley Cup final that year. So it's obviously good. I mean, and it's not really that productive to compare the two teams because really, I mean, the chat would probably be divided there. But I think the point that we're trying to make here is that with Vilardi out of the lineup, the Jets are still looking for a little bit more offense. Obviously, the Scheifele line was excellent against the Rangers, not so much against the Devils. But we'll see what happens here. I think this game against the Islanders is going to be really interesting. I think it's going to be a close game. Like we mentioned how many overtime losses the Islanders have just at home alone, right, Dave? Credit to our trademark Macaulay Culkin on that one. But yeah, I think this is going to be a really tough test for the Jets, and they're going to depend on their top 2 lines. And Ehlers, Monahan, Toffoli. I mean, that line has been so consistent, producing a lot of offense. And Scheifele, Connor, and Iafallo, let's be honest, it's a little bit hit and miss, right? Yeah. It kind of goes with the way the Jets have been playing over the last, 10 to 12 games, the win one, lose one thing that has been the big narrative here, Dave. So, again, it's just good to hear that Vilardi is an option to come back, because when you start hearing things like enlarged spleen, it's scary, right? Like you forget at the end of the day, these guys are human beings, right? Like their health is the most important. Vilardi obviously has had a lot of injury problems since he was drafted by the Kings. What was that, back in 2017, I think, Dave?
I think
2017 so, yeah. Or 2018. I think it was the Vesalainen draft, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think so. 17.
But the point is, like, it sucks for Vilardi. Let's be honest here. Vilardi was playing so well, especially on the power play, right? Like, it was almost like an automatic when the Jets' first power play unit went out there. Vilardi was going to somehow get a goal or an assist, right? So, in the meantime, the Jets have to play. Luckily, they're healthy, aside from Vilardi, as opposed to earlier in the year when they had a bunch of forwards out of the lineup. But again, it speaks to that depth. You could put Cole Perfetti back in the lineup against the Islanders, and at some point, if you need to bring someone else into the lineup, whether that's Rasmus Kupari, who's still looking for his first goal, but I think you'd agree he's looked pretty decent on the fourth line. And there's David Gustafsson, who I keep telling you, Dave, it's tough to keep a guy like David Gustafsson out of the lineup. He's not going to produce a lot of offense, but the guy just always seems to be in the right place at the right time. And I think the goals will come for him, because he's still in his early 20s, right? 23, 24 years old. But I think Cole Perfetti, that's going to be a big storyline. He's been a healthy scratch the last 4 games. He's back in the lineups afternoon on the road. I mean, the Jets need this win. They don't want to lose another game simply because of how well the Colorado Avalanche are playing right now. Even though the Jets are second in the division in terms of points percentage, the Jets don't want to have, we always talk about it, right? Like, you don't want to have two losses in a row. For a team like the Jets, who have been so good all year long, it's not like their season's over if they lose 2 games in a row. But you've also got Washington in the second game of a back-to-back. So like a week ago, we were talking about how difficult this road trip is going to be, and now we're in the 4th game of the road trip, and the Jets are coming off of a disappointing loss. So I think, Perfetti is going to have a lot to prove. And I don't think you're necessarily expecting a goal out of Perfetti. If he scores one, it would be nice, Dave. But you're just looking for him to play a solid 10 or 12 minutes. That's what I would say.
Well, and Doug, our friend, is asking if Perfetti is in, who is coming out? And it seems reasonable, Doug, to make the assumption, and we won't, obviously there's no morning skate, so we'll have to rely on warm-up skate, which gets underway in about an hour in East Meadow, is the fact that our expectation would be it's David Gustafson, right, Ezzy? Yeah. And they'll move Vlad Nemestikov back up to center and then put Perfetti on the right wing. But I
don't think you're taking Barron out, because Barron's been playing very well all year long, right? Like he's been very consistent on that fourth line. So I think it's Gus.
Yeah, that would be that seems like the reasonable expectation. But again, like I said, that's just speculation. Stay tuned to the pregame report that is on illegalcurve.com. We will update that once this show is no longer on the air, because of course we can't go right through till game puck drop. And then of course the post-game show will come your way around 2:40 p.m. But this is the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
By the way, Dave, the Jets game starts in 95 minutes.
Yes, that's true. That is true. First up, though, we'll be talking to our good friend and hockey insider, Frank Seravalli of Daily Faceoff. We'll take a spin around the NHL with Frank. We'll talk about the Jets, of course, with him as well. But that's so KG3, our friend Ken, is telling us in the IC merch store, the drop down for state, province, and the billing information section only includes provinces, no states. Good to know. Our merch guy already texted me, so good to see that Steve is watching.
Dave. What about if we just put like North Dakota obviously is just south of us here. Like we can just put like maybe in brackets under Manitoba, we can say Manitoba of the North or something like that.
No, I think the problem is this is for Stacy, of course. So this is for Pennsylvania, Ezzy. But I think it's more just a function of when the credit card information needs to be aligned with what state you're in. Otherwise, the credit card company will most likely reject it. You don't have a credit card.
Don't be surprised if you see a lot of Manitobans in Grand Forks. I was talking to a lot of people at my kids' elementary school. It's spring break, of course, Dave.
Yeah.
So we're not going down to Florida to Daytona Beach to party, but a lot of folks will be heading down to the beautiful town of Grand Forks. We obviously go there quite a bit. Shout out to our boy Kyle Kozier, of course, original member of Illegal Curve. But yeah, Ken, you'll definitely see a lot of Manitoba license. I mean, let's be honest. You see a lot of Manitoba license plates in North Dakota all year round.
Yes.
North Dakota is our little gem that we like to visit every so often.
Absolutely. It's North Dakota and South Dakota. Go to the Badlands, go see Mount Rushmore. Lots of things to do in the Dakotas. Lots of things to do on the show. But first, one of the last things we're going to do is our final commercial break of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Just to give an update, our boy Steve is working on fixing the issue, Stacy. So hopefully by the end of this show, you'll be able to order that IC merch. But for now, we are going to head to commercial break. And when we come back, Frank Seravalli of Daily Faceoff will join us to talk about the NHL. Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. I'm Dave Minuk. He's Ezzy Ginsberg. We are almost 2 hours into our conversation this morning as we get ready for Jets and Islanders. And of course, to head around the league, we head to our number one favorite guy originally from Philly, but now it's parts unknown, but Frank Seravalli, Daily Faceoff. Hey, Frank, how are you?
How's it going, guys? Good to be back with you. Yeah, still in Philly, born and raised, and haven't ventured very far.
No, that's good. Look, we spent some time there in 2014 at the draft. We had a good time. One of our buddies that we met in Vegas, Philly Dan, is still there. So we love that. We have a fond place in our heart in Philly. And of course,
yeah, but we got to go back there. We have to go for another dinner with Frank, right? Like now we have to cash in on our dinner.
Yeah, anytime. You tell me when.
Well, the last time we were in Philly, Frank, we were at the draft, as I said, and we went to the Phillies game. Hustler was there, Ezzy was there, a couple of Drew and Rich were there, and it got to the ninth inning, and they stopped serving beer. So Hustler and Ezzy and Philly Dan all disappeared. They went to what's the name of the
Xfinity across the street.
Yeah. Yep.
And the rest of us who were interested watched till Chase Utley hit a homer in the 14th inning and ended.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
look at that.
So. Yeah, it was some good time.
Yeah, but you forgot to mention the best part, David. The Chase Utley's home run bounced off of the stands, and then Drew went to catch it, and another fan caught it. So Drew almost caught the game-winning home run. Yes, that was the key part, Dave. You missed the punchline there.
That's a lot to unpack. I mean, also Hustler at a sporting event chasing beer. I mean, things I can't believe.
Yeah, shocking nonetheless. Well, let's talk about the Jets and around the NHL with you, Frank. And we'll start with something that's created some buzz the bunch of frauds, the idea that the Jets are a fraudulent group, as reported by the fine guys at Spitting Chicklets, and someone in the Western Conference supposedly said that. We don't need to speculate as to who, but just in terms of that sort of thing, that message galvanizing a group, what is your assessment in terms of what that can do? Because despite what players will say, they don't listen to this stuff, we know these guys are listening and hearing, especially when it comes from a source like that.
100%. They're hearing it, they're seeing it. And if they're not listening directly, they're having a brother, friend, parent, uncle send them that clip. And I do think it can have a galvanizing impact. Look at the Florida Panthers last year. Keith Tkachuk goes on Toronto radio and says that the Panthers are soft.
Mm-hmm.
They go on an absolute heater and get to the Stanley Cup final. There's been varying points throughout almost every season where there's something that happens. Maybe if you're looking at the Toronto Maple Leafs and it's the Morgan Rielly suspension, they hear what everyone's saying about this team basically only having one defenseman, and they sweep the 5-game suspension and have been really good since. In terms of actually assessing the Jets and whether or not they are frauds, I mean, you are what your record is. And I don't know how anyone could think that they are, given how well they've defended night in and night out. Like, that's the true test to me of what wins in the playoffs. My only question that I had for the Jets this entire season has been, once you get there, you're going to do a great job keeping the puck out of your net, but can you score enough to get over the hump? And I think what we've seen since really the beginning of February, when the Monahan trade, came down, and we talked on our show on Daily Faceoff about that bumper position and how critical it would be on the power play. I mean, it's been a huge game changer for the Jets. So you think maybe the power play gets going, the rest of your offense and your stars, if they get some power play cookies, maybe, get a little bit more confident at even strength. And it's a trickle down effect that I think really the Jets have boosted their lineup in a significant way.
Frank, we just talked about your hometown, the beautiful city of Philadelphia. So we have to ask you about what's going on there with Sean Couturier and Torts. I apologize. I'm not sure if it's been announced if Couturier is playing this afternoon. I was in an emergency room in Winnipeg. I had kidney stones.
Ooh.
So I was
I've had kidney stones 3 times. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy.
Okay, so we have something to talk about that I didn't know that we shared in common, Frank, because I agree with you. I have never experienced pain. I woke up at 1 a.m. and told my wife, Naomi, I was like, something is wrong. Like I felt like I was dying. Like the pain was that bad. So I realized you've had it 3 times. So obviously, that you've had it much worse than I have. But
one time I tried to drive myself to the hospital, and I actually got out in the middle of an intersection and dropped to my knees.
It's that bad. And I was dropping to my knees in the hospital because I couldn't get comfortable. You lay on your back, you lay on your stomach, you walk around, nothing helps.
You're in a constant state of like spasm.
Yeah, it's terrible. So
I've passed them. I've had surgery to remove them. I've had all sorts of stuff. It's a family. It's the Saravalli family curse.
Well, I hope you don't have it a 4th time, Frank. I really hope you don't, because like you just mentioned, it's just the worst pain ever. But I'm
psychotic about hydration. That's the only thing that can keep them at bay. Even if you continue to produce them, if you drink enough, they essentially just float up in your kidney and never come down.
Yeah, 10 glasses of water a day, right?
Anytime I even get a twinge of pain, and this week, I know for whatever reason, it's like kidney stone season. I've had 3 or 4 friends mention that they've had them. It must be something to do with the changing of the seasons and the weather. But for me, I'm like, I cannot drink enough. Sorry for the diversion.
Sorry, unmute myself here, Frank. I wasn't expecting you to say that you'd had them 3 times. So again, I hope that you never get them again. But have they announced if Sean Couturier is playing this afternoon?
He is expected to play today.
Yes. Okay, so he was a healthy scratch. For those who are watching or listening on the pod, like Couturier has been a healthy scratch the last 2 games, and I'm sure that you've been talking about it at Daily Faceoff. Like, is there more to it here because obviously Couturier is the captain. Is it just that he hasn't been playing well and this is Torts just doing Torts things, or is there more to it? Because obviously Couturier is not a guy that you expect to get scratched once, let alone twice.
Yeah, I would put it more in the category of Torts doing Torts things. And here's my explanation for it. Has Sean Couturier been at his best the last 6 weeks? The answer is no. But if you watch this team really closely, there were 4 other players or 5 other players that also haven't been great that you could have pulled out of the lineup to make a statement, or if you really needed to. I get the idea of maybe trying to send a message, and clearly the first scratch coming 34 days after he was being named captain, it grabs headlines. To me, the biggest thing that I struggle with is the accountability factor. This coach that demands accountability seemingly wants to answer to no one. And when I say accountability, I don't mean to media. I don't really care whether John Tortorella answers my questions or anyone else's questions, but the accountability to his own team and players. Because you listen to Sean Couturier, who's been there a long time. He says he doesn't like the way that he's been treated the last little while. Then his agent comes out and says that Couturier has been more or less ignored. And I look at that situation and I say, he's been in the league a long time. He's coming back off of missing 2 seasons. And at some point, his game probably hit a wall this year. The first time, okay, I get it. Sure, you scratch him. Then, so you beat the Leafs and you double down on it, and you still refuse to then answer to the player and to the media. And it's like, okay, well, you send your assistant coach out to do the post-game press conference. Like, what are we doing here? And why do you continue to get in your own way? This has been, by all counts, a marvelous coaching job this season by John Tortorella, arguably the toughest of his career, with a rebuilding Flyers team that he somehow squeezed every drop out of to put them in playoff position this late in the season. It's defied logic and expectations, but in this case, it feels like there's a lot to answer for. And I know Flyers fans are saying, oh, well, he must know because they collected 3 out of 4 points this week against the Leafs and Canes. But that's not good enough for me. I think he owes that team more. And I don't know how you could make the logical argument or explanation that taking a Selke Trophy winner out of a thin lineup somehow makes that team better.
Frank, you're absolutely right. And it's, John Tortorella has been, doing John Tortorella things for his entire career. No surprise. Ezzy and him have had quite the little run in back in the day when he was the Rangers coach, in fact. But
I mean, my run in is nothing compared to the run ins with other media members like Larry Brooks and others. But yeah, I guess I had my 5 seconds of fame, Frank.
Did he ask if you got beat up at the bus stop?
No, unfortunately not.
No, but anyways, Frank, I wanted to ask you about Nashville, because they're a team that it seems like nobody is ever talking about, and what they've done in this run, 16 straight games with a point, 14-0-2,
franchise record.
And it's incredible. But again, unfortunately, because they're Nashville, they don't get a lot of attention. We know that here in Winnipeg, but it just seems like, everybody focuses on the big clubs, obviously, and that there's a reason for that. But is this Nashville team one that folks shouldn't not be paying attention to because of how dangerous they could be going into the playoffs?
I think it's been a great story. And I think UC Saros, when you have a backbone like him, you're always going to have a chance. I tend to lean more towards the reason why people aren't talking about it more isn't because it's Nashville and a smaller market team. It's mostly because I don't know that anyone yet at this point views them as a real postseason threat. And that's not really a knock on them. It's more so that I think they're in the same category as the Flyers. Teams that didn't expect to be here. Barry Trotz came on my podcast in November and said, we're not trying to be good this year. He said, we're 2 to 3 years away from getting back to the standard that we want, which is trying to compete for a Stanley Cup. And they've also defied expectations. I think when I look at that group, I say, okay, you've got Philip Forsberg up front. Who else in that lineup is scaring you? Who is going to do damage in the postseason? And maybe in a year of, unheralded players who always seem to pop up, in this sport, at least at the right time, maybe there's, some magic to create. But you've got Yossi on the back end. And then to me, again, it gets really thin. And so I just look at that group and I say, it seems that there's obviously something there in terms of a cohesiveness. It seems like coach and general manager are on the same page, manager and players and coach. But beyond that, like I just think there's such a, I guess you'd call it stratified layers of what the Western Conference looks like to me. I think you've got 5, maybe 6, if you include Vegas, who's also played poorly, 6 authentic Stanley Cup hopefuls. And then you've got, I think, the Preds and Kings.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And, I wanted just to go back to the Eastern Conference because we were talking about the Philadelphia Flyers, and obviously we spend more time here in Winnipeg in the Central Division and the West, and there's a lot to talk about. I agree. Like, the Predators are an incredible story. You talk about, overperforming expectations, right? But wanted to go back to the Carolina Hurricanes because for years, Dave will back me up here. For years, you might have picked the Hurricanes to win the Stanley Cup over the last couple of years, but I didn't do it this year, Frank, because after a couple of years, I was like, okay, I got to go with a different team here. But obviously the Flyers are in third in the Metro Division. They're not catching the Hurricanes. I believe they're 16 points back or 15 points back, 8-1-1 in their last 10. And the reason why I feel like this team is so fascinating and so dangerous right now, because finally the Hurricanes go all in, quote unquote, all in, and they acquire Evgeny Kuznetsov and they acquire Jake Guentzel. Guentzel, for those who don't know, 11 points in 7 games. It just seems like those trade deadline acquisitions were exactly what the Hurricanes needed for the stretch run. And obviously they're competing for first in the Metro, but they could also win the President's Trophy the way they're playing. So what kind of, what have you seen from the Hurricanes since they acquired Guentzel and Kuznetsov? Obviously Kuznetsov stuff off the ice, we won't get into that, but it just seems like that is exactly what they needed prior to the trade deadline, just to show that they were all in, and they're not just going to be happy with getting to the second or third round.
So I would actually quibble with the way that you frame it, because
you can quibble, Frank.
To me, a team that doesn't give up a first round pick is not all in. That's the amazing part about this deadline for the Canes, is of all the players that a hard first round pick was traded for. And when I say hard, I mean, look, the Canes have to get to the Cup final in order for that second to become a first. And so it was everyone got thrown into the spin cycle with the Pittsburgh Penguins saying that they got a conditional first. I'm sorry, it's a second until it isn't, as far as I'm concerned. So a third for Kuznetsov and a second plus 3 prospects and some cap machinations for Jake Guentzel. I mean, chef's kiss in terms of asset management, and also, as you pointed out, fit. I think the one thing that they really were missing, it's not necessarily going all in. They were missing a very specific type of player, and that's someone who can finish. And, Svechnikov has some of that at, Aho I view as more of an all-around playmaker. But Guentzel, 2-time 40-goal scorer, and led an entire postseason in goals as a rookie, winning the Stanley Cup. Like, that's and Kuznetsov, like, he almost won a Conn Smythe. I have to go back and check. I think I might have actually voted for Kuznetsov in the number 1 spot for Conn Smythe instead of Ovechkin. He was that good for Washington in the playoffs. Both of those things, though, happened a long time ago, 6 and 7 years ago. When it comes to this team, though, now, I think they had the makings already, as you pointed out, having gone on deep runs, having a stacked defense core, and having some really nice pieces up front that play with a unique identity and brand, that they're going to be a true, authentic threat to win the Stanley Cup this year. And I look at every facet of what they do in their operation. I think they're the model franchise in this sport. I think that they are a significant percentage point 5-8, whatever it is, ahead of so many other teams in this league in terms of how they put together their team, how they draft and develop, all those things, their coaching. They have an enviable machine that they've built in Carolina, that I think the best part is, even with some potential, roster influx this summer with Teravainen and Pesce and a few guys up and some others, including Slavin, needing extensions. What they're doing is entirely sustainable year in and year out.
You're listening to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, getting you set up for the Jets and Islanders. Right now, we're looking around the NHL with our friend Frank Saravalli of Daily Faceoff. Frank, you're in Eastern Pennsylvania. We're going to ask you to cast your eyes to Western Pennsylvania and Sidney Crosby. There's lots of upheaval talk with respect to the Penguins and what their plans are for the future. Sidney Crosby has one more year after this on his deal. Do you think that there's any chance that the face of the Pittsburgh Penguins doesn't end his career in Pittsburgh?
I don't want to say zero, but it's pretty close to that. That's what it feels like from talking to people close to Crosby. I think that he's made it clear that he wants to be there. I think, watching this season and the way it's played out has been tough for everyone. But I think that my guess is that they've already had preliminary discussions on what a contract extension looks like. And it's more so about getting to July 1st to actually put pen to paper and register that contract, because he wants to be there. He's the face of the franchise. He's going to stay there until he says no more. Mm-hmm. And he's a huge part of the actual fabric and value of the franchise too. Fenway Sports Group comes in and spends $900 and some million for the Penguins. They do that with the thought process that, hey, we are keeping an icon here as long as we can. So He's an NHL Mount Rushmore player. And even this year has been incredibly impressive for him from an on-ice perspective, having one of the best 36-year-old seasons we've ever seen anyone have. Yet the Penguins don't really have much to show for it. And I think one of the surprising things about what Kyle Dubas said last week during the GM meetings was that he wants to try and make this team as competitive as possible because someone like Sid is there. And I get the push for that. I just feel like, to me, for a team that hasn't won a round since 2018 and will now miss for the second straight season, that's long in the tooth, has deep contract and term commitments, has no prospects whatsoever to speak of except for the 3 that you just got from Carolina, and doesn't really have a ton of cap space and maneuverability moving forward. How do they get there? How do they do it? They turned over 24% of their cap last year. The team's worse this year, and now next year, everyone's going to be 1 year older.
Yeah, it's definitely... it's not an enviable position that the Penguins are in, Frank, but I don't know how you could disagree with what you're saying, right? Like, the way I've always looked at it, I have another question, but the way I've always looked at it is Sidney Crosby will only be traded if he asks to be traded, right? Like, and so until something changes there, and I do think, I don't know, I'm old school. I think there's something to be said for a player playing his entire career with one team, right? Like, we're most likely going to see it with Alex Ovechkin in Washington. I mean, there's a few guys that we could see do it with the Jets. Mark Scheifele, obviously, with his long-term contract, right? But I wanted to ask you, I normally wouldn't ask you about this, but I want to ask you about Tom Wilson because the Jets play the Capitals. And obviously the Capitals are pushing for a playoff spot. And what I wanted to ask you was, do you think the NHL Department of Player Safety, this is a very loaded question because they're highly criticized, but do you think they got it right there? Because 6 games is significant, but that was a very dangerous play. Like, you could take Noah Gregor's eye out with a high stick like that.
Yeah, I think they got it right. I mean, 6 games is also a pretty hefty suspension too. I don't think it's light by any stretch. For all of Tom Wilson's rap sheet, he doesn't have any stick infractions on there. And so I think that's an important thing to point out, that this isn't someone who's been wildly swinging his stick previously. I understand the remorse that he showed on the ice, apologetic right in the, immediate aftermath. Doesn't hold any weight for me. I think, hockey players have a lot going on, but your stick is absolutely 100% one thing that you can control. So that it needed to be dealt with. They felt like, I think the Department of Player Safety looked at it and said that Gregor and Wilson weren't really engaged in any meaningful way before that. And it's not like he was off balance and, tried to catch himself and just kind of wildly swung his stick to help balance wise. I don't see any reasonable explanation for it. And I think for someone that has, a significant disciplinary history, but also doesn't have any stick infractions, that this felt like a nice sort of middle ground. And by the way, Wilson, for the most part, has been pretty clean. His last suspension was in 2021, believe it or not, even if it feels like more recent than that.
And just 1 second, Dave M, I'll go to you in a second. But one thing I want to say about Wilson too is like that contract was criticized, and you can say whatever you want about Wilson, but I think he's got 13 points in his last 11 games. He's got 17 goals on the season. Like, he's a valuable player. So what I wanted to say is Jets fans, I think, are going to be pretty happy that Wilson won't be in the lineup, not just because of the shenanigans, but because he's actually I don't care. He's a good hockey player. He's not one of my favorite players, but I think that gets lost sometimes. People just think he's a goon. No, he's not a goon. Scoring 17 goals in the league is not easy.
He is not a goon at all. I mean, the hits that he's made have been highly questionable, but it's also part of what makes him really effective. I think what is questionable is how well will Tom Wilson age, because that contract it's long and it takes him through his age 37 season. I mean, I just see for a big guy like that who already, he wasn't a burner by any stretch of the imagination. I just don't see it aging well, but the cap is also going to be increasing significantly. The contract goes through 2031. I'd say by 2028 or 2029, we should be in the $120 million range. So maybe they're not thinking all that much about $6.5 million.
Well, Frank, we're going to get you out on this last one. And I keep saying it. I've been saying this on the show for a while now. I've never anticipated a first round quite like this. So this to me seems like it's, I always love the first round. I think most hockey observers or fans love the first round of the playoffs. I think it's always the best. From your perspective, what is the one series that you're most looking forward to watching? I mean, and obviously there's still 2 weeks to go, or 3 weeks to go. So you're not necessarily they're hard and fast.
I can tell you already what series I'm looking forward to watching. Whoever is 2 and 3 in the Central. Whether it's Colorado, Dallas, Winnipeg, Colorado, whoever it is, it feels like an impending steel cage death match. And I actually look, the playoff format, it is what it is. I'm not one of those people that complains about it. I think when you look at those 6 teams in the West that I mentioned that are real legitimate hopes, 2 of them are guaranteed to be out in round 1. And that part is going to be really tough to swallow for 2 teams. So I can't wait. Like, the West, to me, so much more intrigue than the East. I think for the Jets, there's clearly something to play for to try and get in that one spot to avoid that matchup, because I don't like it for anyone, even if you're playing as well as Colorado has been of late. For instance, I picked Dallas to win the Stanley Cup at the start of the year, and I don't really see any reason to change my mind based on how the Stars have played, even if Jake Ottinger hasn't exactly been at his typical level. So there's a lot to like about whatever that matchup is. I would love to be at all 7 games or however long that series takes. I think we talked about playoffs in-house yesterday. I think I'm going to be starting round 1 with the Canucks, but we'll see where it goes.
All right. Well, we'll hopefully see you here in Winnipeg at some point, Frank. And if you do, we'll take you out for dinner like we used to back in the day when you were with the.
We'll take you to the new Earl's Main. Earl's Main has moved. I don't know if Dave M still has his plaque up there, but we'll take you to Earl's Main for a couple cold ones.
I'm in.
There we go. Anyways, Frank, we always appreciate your time and your insight when you join us here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. So thanks very much for joining us.
Have a good Saturday, guys. See ya.
You too,
right,
Frank.
there he goes. That's Frank Seravalli of Daily Faceoff. You can get his great Jets content. They have a lot of Jets content on there. So we always appreciate when Frank joins us here and brings his insight and takes us on a little spin around the NHL. And Ezzy, that's how we ended this Saturday morning show with Frank. Tremendous insight as always. And we,
Absolutely.
like I said, we've known Frank since, was he with the Philadelphia Daily? Which one was he with, Ez?
Frank was originally, I believe, with the Philadelphia Daily News.
Or was it
Daily Inquirer?
Was it the Delaware?
No, Anthony Sanfilippo
Anthony
was with the Delaware County Daily Times. Hold on a second.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. He was with the Courier. So anyways, but the point is we've known Frank a long time. And he's been coming to Winnipeg when he was a Flyers, when he covered the Flyers. And again, when he moved over to Daily, well, he was with TSN, and then he's now kind of the headliner at Daily Faceoff. And they've got some good Jets content as well. So it's always a good follow. And we appreciate that. And we appreciate Frank. And you know what? We appreciate
Philadelphia Daily News, Dave. There you go.
There we go.
Thank you to Wikipedia. Frank, see that? Frank is that big that he's got a Wikipedia.
Wow. All right. Well, maybe IC needs a Wikipedia. Of course, not only would IC need a Wikipedia, but also Ezzy's Richard Polyp and Emma Kidneystone will also need some of their own their sub pages, Ezzy, on our channel. I was going to say quickly, Stacy, just so you know, already been changed. So if you want to order the IC hoodie to PA, you should be able to. And if Ken wants to order it to ND, he should be able to. So thankfully that has all been resolved, courtesy of our boy Steve. So thank you, Steve, for doing that for us. And hopefully if you want IC merch, it is now available. And as I said, it will now be available till the end of the month. So
and hold on, Dave, there's just one more thing we have to do on this Saturday morning.
Put on your antlers. It's time for the Minute Moose Minute on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
As he's like giving me the you know, it's kind of become fun now that Ez has that ability and he gets a chance to do it.
Sometimes I feel like, Dave, I'm only here to hit that bumper. Like that's just my role on the show, is in the last 10 minutes hit the Minute Moose Minute bumper, and then you know I can go on with the rest of my Saturday morning.
I appreciate that. Well, the Moose will be getting underway. They'll be taking on the Canucks this afternoon here in Winnipeg at Canada Life Center. Hopefully, if you go to the game, you'll just make sure you have us on your phone around 2:40 p.m. when we do our Illegal Curve post-game show. I right now, Charlie Horse is asking me about Salamonson, but he's in the playoffs right now, and I think he scored in game 1 for his team. So he's with Schlefka, I believe. So right now he's over there. But I could very easily see him coming back and playing a role for the Moose down the line, depending on what happens. Could be a number of guys from the OHL joining Manitoba. So we'll see how that goes. The Moose still have some games before they even talk about playoffs. They got to earn some points. They got lucky again. Scoreboard watching Ezzy, Iowa and Chicago, the two teams chasing them. Chicago was up. They lost in overtime in a shootout, to the Wild. So the Moose only lost 1 point on one team, 2 on the other. You know, you don't like those extra point games, but better that Iowa won than Chicago. So the Moose still have I think a 6 or 7 point advantage, which is important. And that's why you need to do some damage against these non-divisional opponents. And they've got 2 against the Canucks and then 2 against the Toronto Marlies to close out this homestand. But of course, T. Conopoli would never be happy with me if I did a Moose Minute on Tyrell Bauer's birthday, the 2020 6th rounder of the Winnipeg Jets. I think he's from Cochrane. Yeah, he's from, I think they have him as Calgary, but I believe he's from Cochrane.
I knew he was an Alberta boy.
He's an Alberta boy. And it's his birthday today. He's turning 22, as I believe, if I remember recalling correctly. Yeah, he's 22.
Oh, to be 22 again, Dave.
Exactly. So it's been a good run for this Moose Club. We've detailed it. They're still feeling good. I talked to a couple of players, Dominic Toddonato and CJC, said the little Minnesota Mafia tour yesterday in our post-practice media, and discussing with the two of them what really is the focus. And CJC and Dominic Toddonato both said that it's about desperation. I said, you guys turned an 0-10-1 run into a 9-1-0 streak, and you got yourself back into the playoff conversation. And they said what got us there was playing that desperate hockey. What's going to keep us there is maintaining that desperation. So they split their first 2 games against Grand Rapids, and they'll hopefully continue things on. They hope, fans hope. So we'll see what happens if what this afternoon and how they can do against the Canucks, a team that's kind of similar to them, I think, in terms of points, but I don't know where they are. I think they're about the 6th place team. But again, the Pacific has 10 teams, so it's a little different playoff wise than it is in the Central, which only has 7 teams. So it'll be fun. Thomas Milic, he's been on quite a run. He got both starts, so maybe Colin Delia today, but I suspect they'll do a split of the goaltenders this weekend. So probably Milic one day and Colin Delia the other. Okay, Ezzy, we should, I'd love to talk about the Moose more, but we've got to focus on
the game
Jets.
Does start in about 58 minutes.
So. Which means I still have to get this podcast posted, and that way folks can download who weren't able to join us. So where's Frosty Winnipeg when we need it? We'll do we can do a Moose thing after the game. We can do a Moose thing tomorrow. There'll be plenty of time to talk about the Manitoba Moose. If you want some Moose information and news, head over to the website, check out the practice report. There's a tab, Manitoba Moose. Anything Moose related, I've got it there. I've got it on our YouTube channel. So make sure you're subscribing, make sure you're paying attention, and make sure, for the record, when you go and watch our videos on the YouTube channel, also smash the like button on that. That also helps. We appreciate that. Sometimes I'm like,
you should be smashing the like button on all the content we post on our YouTube channel, right? That
absolutely.
Should just be automatic. You should click on the video and then just hit the like button. Even if you don't like it, Dave, you should still hit that like button.
Hey, we appreciate that. We like or love. And similarly on Facebook, if you see something we post on Facebook, hit that like, hit the share, let other people know. That's how people get to our page, and that's how they find us. Sometimes we appreciate those organic finds, and that's always a good little thing. And, again, people like us as a resource, but we wouldn't be here without all of you, and we wouldn't be here without our sponsors. So let's thank them. And Frosty's got them up on the board, but a big thank you to all the sponsors of Illegal Curve who make the postgame show, the Saturday show, and the website, illegalcurve.com, a possibility. They are, in no particular order, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, Grid Park. Use code Illegal Curve to park for free. And remember, we're going to be giving away free parking upcoming Jets home games. They're playing the Kings. They're playing the Oilers. They're playing the Vegas Golden Knights. They're playing the Senators. We're going to have free parking for one lucky IC subscriber. So you have to be subscribed. You have to be following us, and you're going to get free parking from IC and our friends at Grid Park, Linden Market Dental Center, Zappia Group Realty, Betway, Tough Duck, Boston Pizza, Seagram's, Rolly's Transfer, and Farmery Beer.
Or as Frosty's calling it, Rolls-Royce Transfer.
Rolls-Royce Transfer. There we go. And Farmery Beer, home of the IC Beer. Support these fine businesses because of their continued support of Illegal Curve Hockey. Okay, as well, it's time to, can I just get free parking for my work day? Well, take fruits. I'm not telling you how you have to use the parking. I'm just saying that if you want to go to the Jets game and you win, but it's actually good, the parking will be good. So I'm not going to tell you how to use it. I guess the idea more is that you're using our friends at Grid Park, their app. And again, if you want to use it for a Jets game, you can. It'll be, I think, a $20 credit, which should get you free parking anywhere in Winnipeg for the day. So it's in theory is to be used for a Jets game. That's what we're kind of trying to drive folks towards. No pun intended. But if you choose to use it at any other time, you are able to do so as well. No add-in.
Sounds good to me, Dave M. Yeah, I mean, it's an awesome promo that we have with Grid Park, and I work at the Sport Manitoba building, and they've also got spots there if you're looking for parking around that area, around Pacific Avenue, kind of on the edge of the Exchange District. I mean, it's technically, I guess, Point Douglas because you're close to the Disraeli there. Dave M., you know a lot about Henderson Highway. That's my favorite place to go for lunch. Whether it's whether I'm getting Timmy Hortons or McDonald's, or if I'm going to Henderson Burgers and Subs, there's a lot of little hidden gems there on the Henderson Highway. But again, shout out to the good folks at Grid Park. Definitely use them and take advantage of our promo code, Illegal Curve.
There you go. All right. Well, I couldn't have said it better myself, even though I did say it probably better myself about 10 minutes ago. But well, thank you all for joining us on this Saturday morning. We've gone a little extended time. Charlie Horse with a good reminder: drink your water. Keep hydrated. As I like the comment earlier when someone said it's a problem Kenny Weeb will never have, not being hydrated. We know Kenny loves his hydration. So, all right, everyone, enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Jets game under an hour. This has been the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We'll be back with the Illegal Curve post-game show about 2 hours and 40 minutes after puck drop in New York, in East Meadow, New York. So thanks a lot for joining us. I'm Dave Minuk. He's Ezzy Ginsberg. We're heading out, and we'll be back with you sooner rather than later. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks for listening to this broadcast from Illegal Curve Hockey. For more great Illegal Curve content, subscribe to the Illegal Curve YouTube channel, follow at Illegal Curve on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and visit your online home for hockey in Winnipeg, illegalcurve.com.